Okay, couple updates. Segment number 2. I forgot to tell you, you need a cutting board. Now, I don't know what they're going to have at the individual apartments, but if they don't, you don't have to spend a lot of money on some fancy cutting board. Just get you one of those practically disposable cutting boards that are paper thin, just something where you're not ruining the counter, with your knife when you're chopping. The other thing we forgot in our utensils was you need a teaspoon, which I know will be in the apartments. Okay, guys and gals. If you'll notice, I went ahead, because you don't need to see a video of this, but I took and, using the teaspoon, I dumped in 4 teaspoons of basil and oregano. Very easy. But you keep the teaspoon out. It's good to keep track of things like the pepper and the salt, the red pepper flakes, because you're going to need about a teaspoon of each of those. Teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper, teaspoon of red pepper flakes. You don't need to pre-measure those up in cups or anything. You can just do it right over the pot with the teaspoon, pour the salt in, and just go boom. Okay. First things first, before we do our cutting, which, as you can see, this is kind of it for the prep. You got to cut 1 onion and 3 decent chunks of garlic, okay? But before we start that, we're going to grab the pot, okay? Place it in the sink. And I know this looks boring, but you need to remember, if you're going to use one of these that are, the double like this, you need to bear in mind that you don't want the water all the way up to here. That's why I wanted to show you kind of how far up to do this. You can see it's over the first few holes there at the bottom. And once it gets to this dot right there, okay, we're going to turn it off. Right there is all you need. All right, and grab the pot, set it in place, and just go ahead for right now and turn it on up. The reason why, and you can see I've turned it on up, it's almost all the way to high, is we're going to grab our lid, put your lid on, but don't shut it completely. See how you left a little space? This way you won't make any mistake of hearing. Now, do this now so you don't forget later. We grab our salt and get back here so you can see. Give it a couple of shakes of salt in the water. Do not put olive oil into the water. It's a bad habit some people have gotten into, but what people used to do it for was they used to worry that the pasta would stick together. Well, guess what? All you need is this spoon, and you have to pay attention to your pasta when it's cooking. And you keep stirring it, keep splitting it up and turning it over and moving it around when it is cooking. Now, it takes a while for water to boil, as I'm sure you've all learned in physics. So we're going to leave that alone and come over here and start working on the little bit of prep we have to do, which isn't much. Now, a little hard to do this with a cell phone, gotta tell you. But take your knife. And here's your garlic. What you're shooting for, okay, is number 1, do not cut your finger off. But if you can see here, let me get in the focus. You're wanting to cut it up real thin, like this. And once you've got it cut thinly, yeah, that's nice. The phone just dropped. Let's get it propped up here. But once you've got it cut thinly, see. Take a look here. About that thick. And you've got all 3 pieces all cut up thin like that. You're going to do some chopping. So hang on a second. Sorry about the technical delay. But you can just feed it right in there. Sure if you've gotten a really great view or not. Let's try that angle there. And once that is done, then you don't have to get fancy with it. Just take your knife, go like this, okay, nice and even, getting it so it's all chopped up finely. Wiping it off the knife there. And then I like to give it a little extra chopping like that. Now once that's done, wipe it off the knife and you can gently set it off to the side there. Another bad trick people do is they'll put the garlic in too early and just make you a little pile there. Okay, now that's 3 pieces of garlic, which is enough for 6 people. That's the fingers off there. Now, when it comes to the onion, we're going to slice off the bottom, or rather the top, and we're going to slice off the bottom real quick. There we go. Slice that off. Just like that. Okay. Then we got to grab those, throw them in the garbage right then. Now, we're going to take and just make a small incision here, like this. Okay, very carefully. And if you'll notice, the outer layer, we're pulling it off. Now, another common mistake with cutting onion and spaghetti. People like to chop up their onion like they do the garlic. And no, you don't have to. Basically, you want to cut your onion in half like this. Alright? Then you're going to lay it down just like this. See the shape so you know which direction you're laying. And then all you need to do is cut sections of it like this. Throw it in the pot. And I'm going to show you, trying to do this one-handed is not easy. But that's about the thickness you're looking for. Right about there. Okay? Alright, I don't know if you really can see this or not, because each time I'm doing this, I'm having to set the camera down on its side, and I guess I'll have to review it later and see if it actually recorded anything. But I'm slicing it up, and we're not going to chop the onions. You don't need to chop the onions. See, the sauce is going to end up cooking for like an hour, okay? These onions are going to literally practically melt. Now, we grab our onions. We got 2 piles, so we want to get the first one, throw it in there. You don't have to do it gently or anything, just throw it in there. Take another one, toss it in. Now they're in the pan. You can take your wooden spoon, and you can do this with your hand if you want, just breaking them up before you throw them in, or you can do what I'm doing with a wooden spoon. Okay. Now, we're going to take our olive oil. Grab olive oil. And you're going to pour a very liberal dousing. You want it all over the onions, okay? And that's about all the olive oil you're going to need for the whole meal for the 6 people, okay, or the 6 helpings. We're going to take our burner and we're going to put it not all the way to high, but we're going to back it off a little bit, okay? About medium high. If your oven in the apartment that you're using will show medium high. That's always nice. And then we're going to let this start to heat up. We've got everything else ready. One of the things you can do ahead of time, you can pop open your spaghetti while you're waiting. Now that all your prep is done, you can prep your box. I like to squeeze it up high like that. The sauce is about right there, so that's why I like to take the set this. Very interesting camera filming here. Trying to get this thing to sit still. I like to cut it just like this, real carefully, but real high. I'm opening the box, but I'm not getting anywhere near the juice. And that should be the only time you need these scissors. So you can toss it in the sink, throw the tab away, open up your box, and then it's ready for when you need it. Okay. We talked about the sauce. Yeah. Sure y'all figured out this is not a professional recording. Anyhow, let's get the phone to stand up. Just a little would be nice. See, we go ahead and pop the cap, set it off to the side. Now those two are ready. We're just waiting for that to heat up. Basically what we're going to do is we're sauteing the onions. We're going to stir them around till they're nice and kind of softer looking, kind of golden. We're going to add pepper, salt, our red pepper flakes. We're going to dump those in there, stir it up, and then we're going to grab our hamburger meat, which I threw in the sink. Right there, we'll pop that open, and we're going to dump that in. And that is where this little jewel comes in. Again, this is what it looks like. Okay, that's what's smashing the show you. That's what's breaking apart the hamburger meat. Okay, it makes it real easy. And considering the number of people you're cooking for, you really should buy one of these. You have to have one of these, and you need the pasta spoon. Okay, there probably will be one in the apartment. All right, this is starting to sizzle a little. So we're going to add, I'm going to set this down for a second here. Again, yeah, some of this you may be able to see, may not. But we're going to take our teaspoon. You can do it right over the top of this. Get your full teaspoon of salt. Put it in there. Okay? Put your salt up. That should be all the salt you need to add. Just a teaspoon. Then we're going to fill up our pepper. Teaspoon of pepper. You don't have to have the teaspoon, but it does keep you from putting too much salt and too much pepper in. Red pepper flakes, each its own. I do about a teaspoonful, and that tends to be enough. Now the onions are starting to saute. It doesn't take very long. You can see what they look like there. Okay, there they are. We're just going to take the spoon. As you can see, we're just kind of stirring in the salt, pepper, the red pepper flakes, making sure any remaining onions are kind of broke apart. Oh, by the way, I mentioned before about how the onions will just, end up melting, right? They're just going to kind of melt when they're all cooked together here. But also, in a minute when we put the hamburger meat in, that little tool I keep telling you about, well, we're framming this up and down and cooking our hamburger meat. That also breaks up the hamburger meat. Telephone ringing from Blacksburg, South Carolina. I don't know anyone in Blacksburg, so that means it's a telephone solicitor. Tip for all you youths: don't answer calls from solicitors. Anyhow, if you don't know the number, don't pick up. Alright. Our onions are almost ready. We'll give them just a little longer to... Now, while we're waiting on the onions, when you do the math, let's just say it's 36 people. Well, that's easy because you'll be doing 6 times what I'm doing, quantity-wise. So if you're doing 4 teaspoons of basil and 4 teaspoons of oregano, well, times 6, that's 24 spoons. I'm gonna stir this up. Obviously, it's not going to all go in one pot. Now, the nice thing about the sauce, because one thought may come to mind, y'all may say, well, we'd have to have 6 kitchens or 3 or 4 kitchens going all at the same time. No, you make up the vegetarian sauce first and get it simmering and turn it down on low, put a lid on it, turn it down really low and keep stirring it occasionally, but you can set that off out of the way and then work on the one with the meat. You know, you've got, on any stove, you're going to have multiple burners. So probably you can do this with 2 kitchens, but you still need the pots and pans and stuff. All right, these look ready. If you notice, they're starting to kind of, the technical term is saute, but you know, they kind of begin to wilt a little. They're getting soft. Now, we're going to add our hamburger meat in. Let me set this phone back again. Hopefully it'll stay put. I'm just going to go grab the package. Now, I'm sure you know this, but after you handle, I'm opening the lid to my garbage can already, so I don't have to worry about opening that. But if you've got a plastic package, you're going to use the scissors to cut that open. You can do it right over the pot. In this case, mine comes in a bag. See? A bag. So I'm able to take the paper, throw it away, no fuss, and I'm able to grab the bottom of the bag and drop it in there. But even though I haven't, as you can see, it doesn't look like I have touched any of the hamburger meat, you gotta take 2 seconds, and you'll probably hear the water running in the background. I'm washing my hands. The meat is fine in the pot. It's starting to cook. Take the moment to wash your hands. Anytime you handle that raw meat like that, little soap, little water, wash your hands. Okay. All right, now, here's that tool, and I hold the pot, and I begin just pushing the meat down. Grab the phone so you can see. A little hard here, sorry. But see how I'm doing that? It's impossible for me to do this all on the video here. So I'm going to set you back down so you get the gist of what we're talking about here. There we go. All right. Now you can see the speed. See, this is how quickly you're doing it. You're just going around in a circle, pounding away. And yeah, it's going to stick to it a little bit. You can cram it against the side. But like I said before, you're breaking the hamburger meat up, but you're also breaking up the onion. So why sit there cutting up an onion and having it make you all tear up when you don't have to? This is one of those dishes where you don't have to. Technically, that's called slicing the onion, if you're looking for the culinary term. Now, this is pretty broken up. It's fairly well mixed in together. What are the ingredients that we have not added? Haven't added the tomatoes, the sauce, the oregano, the basil, and we haven't added the garlic. The garlic does not need to saute. There are plenty of spaghetti recipes out there that'll have you throw that garlic in right after you've cooked the onion, after you've sauteed the onion. But funny thing about garlic is, if you saute it too much, it loses all its flavor. And the great part about spaghetti is that, you know, nice Italian flavor. You're not going to get that with overcooking your garlic. And your garlic will cook just fine in your sauce. No problem. It'll cook just fine in the sauce. It'll blend and meld. A little trick here for planning, okay? All this, you know, your coach is going to take you to the grocery store. And you can see this takes a little time to do, but it's not real hard. Your sauce has to cook for a minimum of 30 minutes. Minimum. But that's just barely edible, okay? If you want it to taste good, you gotta cook it for a good hour. At least an hour. Yeah, it's edible after 30 minutes. And if you're running short on time, forget it. Just go for it. Get it done. Get people fed. But if you have any way to get this going, the sauce could sit there for hours. It doesn't matter. The longer the sauce cooks, the better it tastes. Every time. Even if you, and by the way, if you're not using really good sauce like this, you definitely want it to cook longer because it will improve the taste of your flavor. Please don't buy ragu. That is just all sugar, water, and a few tomatoes. That is not spaghetti. Now, you probably can't hear it on there, but I can hear the water starting to boil. And if you'll notice, the lid fell down because I was doing this. The lid closed on the thing. We don't want the lid completely closed because we want to remember that it's there. All right, now everything is chopped up as good as it needs to chop up. It still needs to cook a little bit more before we do anything more. But you take your wonderful tool, bang it against the side, it gets all the meat off, put it in a sink. You're done with that. Unless you've got another pot you're getting ready to go. Now we switch back to our wooden spoon and we keep stirring. If you notice, this is not something you're walking away from. You're keeping stirring. You know, you can give it a chance to rest for a moment, but for the most part, you're here. You're here with it. Your temperature over there is still on medium high. We know we have a medium high on our water here, boiling. And if you did this right about the time the meat is done cooking, okay? And you're looking in here and you don't see anything red. And I'm going to show you the meat in just a second, so you can get an idea of what it should look like once this is all cooked before you add anything. And there's a reason why you don't add stuff to this until it's cooked. If you start adding the basil and the oregano or any of the sauce, you can't tell if the meat's cooked through, and you do want the meat cooked all the way through. This is not a steak. Yes, I eat my steak medium rare. I think Oliver does too. But hamburger meat out of a package like that, no. Cook it all the way through. You don't want any red. You don't want any pink. You're looking for a grayish cooked color. But what I was going to say is right about the time this is done, usually right about then, the water will be boiling. It's not a perfect science, but pretty close to that same time, this will begin to boil. Now, we don't actually need that boiling yet, but we did need it to get good and hot. And it takes a while for water to boil, as you know. So we want the water to be kind of accessible for when we want it ready to rock and roll, okay? Now the meat's pretty much done. I can hear this starting to boil. It's on the edge. I'm going to turn that down to medium-low. So the water is on medium-low now, okay? It's on standby, basically. It's good and hot. It's probably about 160 degrees. And it'll stay at about 150, 160. So it'll only take a moment or two for us to crank that up on high, get it boiling, and throw our pasta in. And as you remember, we already salted that, so there's no more salt needed there. We've already added our salt to this. No salt needed here. Now, let me show you what the meat looks like real quick. Can't get too close because of the steam. You won't be able to see a thing. But that's about what it should look like. You can still see slithers of onion that are left, and that's fine. That adds character to the dish, believe me. They are going to further melt, though, after they cook for a while. Now, we're going to take our spoon, knock it off, take it out, and here's our oregano and our basil. I'm just going to spin it around in a circle, set that down, grab the other one. We're going to spin this around in a circle. You are welcome just to dump them straight in, but you'll find that it's a little easier to stir it in. Now the garlic. Everybody has their own way of getting things off a cutting board. I just take the knife, I slide it right up under, I slide the garlic over onto the knife, okay? You're not going to cut yourself or anything. The blade's against the cutting board. All right, and see, there it is on the knife. And I'm just going to carry it over. You can come with me here. Carry it over, and I dump it right in, okay? I tend to just, it's hard to hold the knife and the phone at the same time. But as you can maybe see, take my finger, just slide the garlic in, and guess what? You're done with the knife. Set the knife in the sink. Now, this is what it should look like. Got all your spices and everything else in there. Okay. Let me get you set back up here. Make sure you can see. Yes, you can. All right. Then, wooden spoon. Thing's still on medium high. We're still cooking. So if there was any little bit of meat left that we may have still been a little red, we didn't see it, it's okay. We know it's finishing right now. Now we stir these things in. We've got our garlic in, basil, oregano. And you're going to be able to tell the mixture just standing over it. You're going to be able to, you know, you can smell all of it. You can smell everything will have very distinct. You'll know you can smell pepper. Not really going to be able to smell the salt, but the oregano, basil, pepper, sure, you're going to know it's all there. Now we take this, the tomatoes, okay? One at a time, we're going to add first the box of tomatoes. And I like to put the box down in and pour because it will splash out and get all over you. I would advise you guys, for any of you who haven't done much cooking, put an apron on, okay? Because tomato sauce can be a mess on white shirts or any shirt, but it can be hard to get out sometimes. So we poured that in. Try to show you this so you can see. That's what it's looking like, okay? Get your meat, tomatoes. We're just mixing that together. And we're going to give this a few seconds before we add anything else to it. The sauce is what's next. But we're just waiting. I tend to, I don't know if you saw it or not, I tend to just take my spoon, stand it up in the back when I have to grab something else. The teaspoon, by the way, we're done with it. Going in the sink. Don't need it. All right, we're starting to boil. It's bubbling. So now we're going to take our jar, okay? Put that in. There we go. Now we've just poured the sauce in. Here's the step that you may or may not be doing. We're going to, let me show you what it looks like. There's your sauce. Haven't stirred it in yet. I'm taking the wine and I'm going to pour it into the jar here. And I tend to use for 6 people for this particular portioning. Let me prop this up again. Now we're down to the cheese for props. Okay. I take the wine, pour it right in here. You don't have to exactly measure. You know about what a cup looks like. But you can, if you want to measure a cup, measure it out. Take the lid, very important. Put the lid on and make sure it's on. Then I hold it over this, okay? Not out in the open, because if you didn't do the lid good enough, all it's going to do is drip down into the sauce. But I give that a shake or two. That gets any remaining sauce off the lid and out of the jar. Pour it in. Now, you're done with the jar. By the way, when you do it the way that I do it here, and now we're just simply stirring the sauce in. Now the timing for this is we're going to wait for this to begin to boil again, which won't be very long, because we did everything in stages. And each time, everything was kind of boiling. Even when there was just meat in there, you could see it was steaming up and there were bubbles because it was boiling. We added the tomatoes. We didn't do anything else till it was boiling. So each time,